In this video, I'm going to talk about managing disruptive people. I'm going to talk about what to do before the event to minimize the chances of someone being disruptive. And importantly, I'm going to talk to you about what to do if somebody is being disruptive in your session. So at some point in your career, you're going to experience an individual that is going to be difficult to manage. And disruption can come in a number of ways. I've experienced people who think that they've got a agenda point that they absolutely want to make, and they can't be quiet until they've made that point. I have dealt with situations where there are people that think that we shouldn't be doing this session at all. We shouldn't be doing it now, or we shouldn't be doing it this way. And I've dealt with people that think that we're not addressing the right issue. All of these kind of challenges, as well as dealing with some of the personality type challenges, so people that are just too loud, people that talk too much, people that are chatty and talk to their neighbour or their group around them too much, people that don't say very much at all, or the people that digress all the time and talk about all kinds of things. We're going to talk about how to manage some of those later, but today in this session I just want to talk to you firstly about those disruptive folk that probably are the most scary as a facilitator. Why disruption is such a problem is that if you've designed your agenda well to meet the aim that your client or you need to achieve, then having someone coming in halfway through the session or towards the beginning of the session and saying that they think we should change everything and do things in a different way really can be very disruptive to achieving the aim that you're after. In my early part of my facilitating career, when I have been led by people that think that we should do it a different way, it nearly always is the case that you don't tend to get the outcome. And of course, what happens when you get to that stage is they don't tend to look at the person that's the disruptor. They will say that workshop didn't really achieve what it set out to do. And you as the facilitator kind of have to take that on your shoulders. So it's a problem that you need to manage as a facilitator. And no matter how well you've planned your event, this can happen to you. As Mike Tyson famously said, everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And sometimes it feels a bit like that when you have a disruptive participant. So what do you do about it? Well, the first thing to do is what you can do before the event. So in talking to your sponsor or client or the lead person in this workshop, I always ask about the participants. I want to know who might be disruptive, who might not think that we should be here doing this now or doing it in this way. So I'm trying to work out in there, who do I need to manage in advance? Following that conversation, I then want to talk to them. So whoever's going to be the disruptive person or might be, if I can have a conversation with them before the event, what I would do in there is talk about the aim, introduce myself of course, talk about the aim of what we're trying to get together to achieve, and share with them my agenda, my draft agenda, thinking about how I'm going to approach that, the sessions that I'm going to plan into that. And what I want to do here, of course, is to give them an insight into that and really to bring them into the team so that they feel part of the design team, if you like, for the workshop. That helps, rather obviously, in that they then find it harder later to challenge, but it also gives them a chance to change things now, because ultimately, if there is a better way and if they have got some ideas, let's hear them and let's build them into the planning now so that you can be prepared for that. So that's what you do before the event. But what about if you're in the beginning of the workshop and somebody puts their hand up and says, I don't think we should be doing it this way? I have had this happen a number of times, and the way I handle things straight away is to listen firstly. So firstly, I'm not going to dismiss what they're saying. I'm going to listen to what they've got to say. I'm then going to capture the points. If it's an agenda type question, a challenge that says, well, why aren't we talking about the marketing budget? I'll put the marketing budget on the flip chart. So the power of writing it up there. It might be in a parking lot, perhaps, or it might be straight in the main flip chart at the moment. Doesn't matter too much. The point is I'm demonstrating that I've listened and I've captured that point. That's now registered. That sometimes makes the problem go away. If not, then, and if it's a challenge to the process, or we shouldn't even be doing this at this stage, here's what I try and do. After listening, I will say something like, I think the aims of what we're trying to do today are kind of similar to what you're talking about. And what I would love, if it's possible with you, if it's okay with you, can we run this session that I've planned for the next session or two? And then at coffee, let's catch up and talk about whether it's working the way that you think it should be. I nearly always at that stage get them agreeing. It's very rare for them to say no and tell me that they don't want to do it that way. They normally agree. So I can then run those sessions, and by the time we have that coffee break and I catch up with them, quite often they are convinced that we're headed in the right direction. It's important also to prepare the room. This really helps. So as the participants walk into the room, if they see a bunch of flip charts up, some big diagrams perhaps, but run through that kind of depict the whole session. So I might already have parking lot, I might have actions with who and when on there, and I might have a few visuals to signal what we're doing through the workshop. That really helps all participants to understand that this has been thought through and planned, and that there's a structure to what we're doing. It does help with compliance. People typically think, okay, well, clearly he's thought about this, so we better comply with what we're being asked to do. It really does help to manage some of that potentially low-level disruption. So get the room set up, and if you're working virtually or online, then you can do the same thing with your online whiteboard. One of the things that you can do if you know you're going to have a lot of disruption on particular agenda points is borrowing from the open space facilitation methodology. So in this model, you would start your session by having people come up with the topics that you want to cover in that session. You then allocate those topics to a room or breakout area, and whoever came up with the topic, you ask them to lead the conversation, and you might structure a process, explore the issues, what are the options for the future, and a preference or a priority for the next actions that you want to take, one example. But you let them lead their breakout session on their topic. And the thing about open space as a methodology is that you encourage people to vote with their feet. So if you want to go and talk about that particular topic, go to that room where the person who came up with it will be leading a conversation on it. If you don't want to go to that, go somewhere else. If you're in a session and you're not adding value or feel that you're not getting anything from it, leave and join another one. Why that works well is that if that topic is important, a lot of people will go. And if it turns out that it's only important to one person, then they pack up and they go off to one of the other sessions instead. So it's quite a nice way of potentially either exploring those issues or showing that perhaps those issues aren't as important to everyone else as that individual might hope. So I've had this happen in probably the most spectacular way. I was running a board and executive away day, a strategy session for a government organisation. And we had spent a number of weeks planning this. It was an important day. The chair was a Lord in the House of Lords in the UK, so I'd been to the House of Lords preparing this with him and working with the Chief Executive. And on the day, I'd arrived early, I'd set up the room, and the board, just the non-executive part of the board, about a dozen of them, had had a breakfast and a pre-meeting the night before. And they called me in with 20 minutes to go, and they said, Kieron, we don't think don't want to be doing this. We don't think this is the right agenda. What we want to be talking about is this, this and this. I can tell you that was about the most terrified I've been about to go into a facilitated session. Well planned, lots of great sessions to achieve an aim. So what did I do? Well, firstly, I listened to what they had to say. So I've got 12 of them talking to me now as well, which has added to a bit of the challenge. So I listened attentively. I then said, again, I think that the aim that we're trying to get to is not dissimilar to what you're all saying now. And I've designed with you a session that is going to get us to that aim. So what I'd say to you all is, please can we go with this just for the first 2 sessions before coffee, and then when we get to the break and have a coffee, we will touch base and see if it's working. They agreed to that, and then we went into the main session, and I managed to persuade them that it was working. They were confident after the 2 sessions that it was working in the way they hoped it would. So we managed to rescue it, but it was terrifying. Having the whole half the team tell you that they didn't want to do it that way was a real challenge. An important watch out: if someone or a couple of members of the group say that they don't want to tackle it in a particular way, don't allow a debate about how to go into how to run the session. I have, in my early days of facilitating, run into some real challenges where I did allow the group to have a conversation about how best to do this, how best to prioritize, how best to plan the next stage of a project. What happens very quickly is you get a big debate about how best to do it. That lasted about 45 minutes before we're then all over the place with the agenda, really difficult to recover from, and then you get to the end of the session and it's all your fault as a facilitator. So you need to keep the group running to the agenda that you've created. If you've managed it well in advance, which you will have done because you'll have followed my advice and you'll have talked to the sponsor and maybe some of the participants in advance, then you'll have a great workshop agenda, you'll have a great process. Stick to the process and you'll achieve your aim. So that's how to manage disruptive people. Before the event, talk to the client lead or the sponsor, and talk to the disruptive person or people, or those that you suspect might be. In the event, if it starts to go off the rails, listen carefully, make a note of their points, but don't allow them to change what you're trying to do. Get their permission and agreement to carry on with what you're doing, and then check in with them at the breaks and keep them on side throughout the day. And if you really need to, then you can have a conversation with them that says, this is what we are planned, this is what we've designed for the day, this is the aim we're trying to get to. I think we really do need to keep up with that, but encourage them to leave. You don't need to kick them out. I don't think that ever needs to happen, but do give them permission to go. If it's not for them and they don't feel that they're going to get anything from it and they're not going to add any value to it, then encourage them to go.